Hello, welcome to another episode of Set Musings. Today we're going to be looking at Lorwyn. So yeah, we're entering a really interesting time for Magic, at least from my eyes. It's interesting how clearly they were trying to get everything lined up nicely. I'd mentioned how, core sets came out every 2 years. And then when we had a look at 10th edition last week, which was still a 2-year duration core set. And then, we get to the 1-year core sets for a number of years. Obviously, they change it again a bit later in Magic's history, but we get to the 1-year core sets from M10 onwards. But it's interesting to just mull over the lead into that, because anybody that's familiar with set releases in Magic, like earlier set releases, will probably be aware that although they were releasing core sets every 2 years, they didn't always nicely fit into that July slot. It was a little bit wobbly. But then as we move into Ravnica and then, M10 and obviously prior to that Future Sight, things have got more consistent. But still, Wizards are looking for something to go in that July slot, because of course it's still coming up every 2 years. And the reason why it's relevant for this set is because this set forms part of, it's like 2 mini blocks to make a mega block. So just to wind back a little bit, to put this into its place chronologically. So we're up to 2007 now. The set comes out in October the 12th, 2007. So previous to that, in July, we'd had 10th edition, and we've done a set musings for that. So if you cast your mind back to good starting points, say Ravnica City of Guilds. So we have the Ravnica block, so City of Guilds, Guild Pack, Dissension. That July slot, because of course obviously 9th edition had come out just prior to Ravnica City of Guilds, so that would be a 2-year coverage, if you like, of the standard. The July set is Cold Snap. That sort of slides in nicely to that, for want of a better word, I'm calling the core set slot, which at that point wasn't, a core set slot every year. It was every 2 years. So then we get Time Spiral, Plane of Chaos, Future Sight. Then we get 10th edition slotting in nicely to that July slot. So we have Lorwyn, Morningtide, Shadowmire, Eventide is in effect in that slot. So that fills up our slot, because again we've got course every 2 years, and that comes out July 25th. So now we nicely roll in to Shards of Alara. So we get 3 Shards of Alara sets, and then July slot is M10, and then we just roll in. So every July we get a core set up to more recent machinations, where they sort of drop the core set and then drop the 3 set block and went to 2 set and went to 1 set, and brought in core sets, that sort of thing. But for that period onwards, for a number of years, there was some pretty good consistency in terms of you had 3 sets, then a core set, and that basically started with M10. But to me, the Lorwyn block was sort of the lead into that, really. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. Anyway, back to the set. So you can see up here, there's quite a bit to look out for. Let me just scroll through this. So, some things you're probably picking up on already as I scroll through. Pretty distinctive artwork in the set. There was a tribal theme going on. You can get these sort of tribal enchantments. But we'll come on to individual tribes in a moment, because I've broken this down quite granularly because it is really important. Interesting Oblivion Ring artwork. We've got these incarnations as well, and the usual things. We've got merfolk and well, saying usual things, but we have this heavy tribal element, some of which features tribes that we're very, very familiar with. Other ones maybe not so much, and I'll come on to those in a moment. Probably the big thing, the big shift, is we have Planeswalkers in the set. Now, there we go. It's rather convenient. 5 Planeswalkers, and again, we'll come back to these. But the reason why I wanted to bring it up at this point is that it's a new card type. Now, these were supposed to have come in around the time of Future Sight, but for various reasons, one of which was just the sets were always already super complex anyway. I'm not sure either if they'd quite finished the templating on them as well. So yeah, again, there's lots of links at the bottom of the Wikipedia article. Sorry, not the Wikipedia article, the MTG Wiki article for Lorwyn. So you can check all of that out. I've mentioned themes, mechanics, planeswalkers, tribal races, species, keywords, abilities to watch out for. We'll be highlighting champion, changeling, clash, death touch, evoke, hideaway. 301 cards in the set, 121 commons, 80 uncommons, 80 rares, 20 basic lands. First set of a 2-set mini block. As it's the first set, hurrah, we have basic lands to look at. So that's going to be interesting. You'll see here the set logo. It can either be interpreted as an elven ear or a leaf, depending on how you look at that. I think I mentioned it came out on October the 12th, 2007, but I'll mention it again in case I didn't. And we had this sort of, what would you call it? So like quite different. Some of which might be considered to be sort of slightly twee in some ways. But definitely the artwork on a lot of cards in here was quite different than we'd seen before. I think particularly the white cards. Particularly the Kithkin. And you can see there's a large amount of elementals. We're sort of heavy as well in here in monocolour in this set. You'll notice that there are multicolour things, but you'll see in a moment they tend to resolve around a certain aspect in terms of creatures. We've got, you can see here a smattering of artifacts and some very interesting non-basic lands, and then look at these awesome lands which we'll talk about and have a look at properly. But I just thought you'd like the usual overview there. So let's start with Planeswalker. So 5 Planeswalkers, and you can see, just to break it down, I'm sure everybody's seen their fair share of Planeswalkers. So you have the plus ability here. They've all got +1 abilities. So Ajani, life gain; Jace, it's card draw; Liliana, it's discard; Chandra, it is damage; and Garrett, Wildspeaker, it's untapping lands, basically getting your mana. We then have this minus ability, this -1 on the first. Well, three of the 5 cards have a -1, and we've got +1/+1 counters on Ajani and Vigilance. Jace is giving a target player card draw. You could obviously target yourself. So here, yeah, as well. This party Jace, each player draws a card. So just on that one, just to be... And of course with these, what's happening is, if you activate a plus ability, it's putting counters on. And this is the amount of counters that each of these Planeswalkers start off with. They're loyalty counters. And then obviously minus is taking it off. This one's interesting in that it's a -X. And you can use that to deal X damage. And then Garrett Wildspeaker is putting a token into play. And then we get the ultimate ability. So that's always the last one on this sort of template for Planeswalkers. You'll see later Planeswalkers, particularly ones that were printed further on in Magic's history, which are printed at uncommon. Might have only had at least 2. May not have 3 on them, may only have 2 abilities on them. And you can see with this, it has a pretty big effect on here. And generally, you can sort of see there's a relationship between the ultimate, the loyalty as it comes into play, and then what the +1, how much +1 stuff you get, how many +1 counters you get. So there's a sort of balance between the power of this effect, the loyalty, and this going on. So you can see with this one, it going up, getting the ultimate ability would happen fairly quickly. With Jace, longer for that to happen. Okay, so other tribal things. We have 35 elemental cards in here. And there's certain things you need to know about the elementals, which we'll come on to do with keywords and abilities. You can see there's also a multicolored 5-color elemental in here in the form of Horde of Notions. But you can see a lot of these have pretty powerful effects or very useful utility on them. We have Elves, 24 of those. Now I've included here, because I just wanted to show you this, a number of these cards aren't just creatures. They are in fact elf tribal. And you can see here as well, we've got things like tribal enchantments. So, that 35 cards is across all the spell types, not just creatures. For that particular tribe. Same with fairies. We've got 19 cards which have a type of fairy on them. That was an interesting thing to do in a set. And as we go through this, you'll probably notice the presence of a multicolored card, and also with certain tribes what color combinations they gravitate towards. So with elementals, the primary color. So there was a primary color and a secondary color or colors. So with elementals, it was red, but the secondary color was all the other colors, so it appeared in multiple different colors. Elves was green and black, and you'll also see that in the presence of any multicolored cards. Fairies is blue and black, We've got Giants, which is red and white. And again, extends beyond just creatures to sorceries and instants and enchantments. 27 cards which had Goblin as the type on them. And Goblins, it was black and red. And we've got Kithkin, which is white and green. And again you'll notice that you know, those particular cards are all legends. The multicolored cards. We had Merfolk, which was blue and white. There's Sig. And Shapeshifters, which were all colours. Very useful tribe for lots of different reasons. And then Tree Folk, which was green primarily, but then the secondary colour was black and white. And you can see in this case, we got the 3 colour legendary creature, which is Doran, the Siege Tower. And then just to show you, so no cards outside of those tribes. So everything in terms of creatures either slides into the particular tribes, or the only thing you'll notice, there's no humans in the set, where might be considered to be human, is some of the Planeswalkers. So first up, we have Champion as one of our mechanics, and you'll notice also there's a reminder here of changelings as well in the set. So this card is every creature type at all times. So changelings have a type of shapeshifter, and then they have this changing ability on them. We'll come on to that in a moment. So champion a creature. When this comes into play, sacrifice it unless you remove another creature you control from the game. When this leaves play, that card returns to play. But you could also, you got some cards that champion a specific tribe. So with shapeshifted, it would just champion a creature, because it could be any creature type. If it was a Kithkin, then it would champion a Kithkin. If it was a fairy, then and so on. And you can see there's 9 of those. Here's our changeling, so 19 changelings, and again I'm including both creatures and tribal instants that are also in here, as that have the changeling ability on them. And then just a reminder really that this card is every creature type at all times. And you can see a number of these have very interesting abilities on them, and we're across all colours as well. Clash was a thing, and sometimes it's difficult to spot because it's actually in here in the text. So each player reveals the top card of their library, then puts that card onto the top or bottom. A player wins if their card had a higher converted mana cost. And so some of these have reminder text if it fits in. This one doesn't. It just has this ability triggers after the clash ends, because this cares about clash. So whenever you clash, tap target creature an opponent controls. So there were some cards in here which triggered as a result of clash. And you can see the clash ability may be tied up in some way or occur at a certain point. You can see here, so when it gets put into the graveyard, there's one on an ETB. Death Touch. So with Death Touch, it was introduced in Future Sight. It represents an ability that has long been part of Magic, but it was only recently keyworded. And in Lorwyn we get Death Touch on 6 cards. So whenever this creature deals damage to a creature, destroy that creature. And you can see again, some cards here, weren't creatures, so they didn't have Death Touch on them, but they triggered or imparted Death Touch in some way. Interesting here. So we don't have wolves in the set through a card, but we do have tokens, and so that's the other way some other creature types outside of what was on like regular creatures was introduced, was through the use of tokens. Evoke. So it looks like we got slightly more evoke cards in red than any other colour. This is a nice ability. We're probably familiar with things like Drifter and Shriekmaw. So you can cast the card as usual for like 4 blue. In the case of Drifter, you get a flying creature elemental. It's a 2/2, and when it comes into play, draw 2 cards. Now what you'll notice is all of these cards have an ETB, and the reason for that is that obviously you need something to get something if you decide to play this for its evoke cost. So the evoke cost of Drifter is 2 blue. So when you play this spell for its evoke cost, if you do, it's sacrificed when it comes into play. So you get the effect, but you don't get the creature. So all of these have a particular effect on them. That can be a static ability. That can be triggered still if you evoke them, but you just don't get the benefit of the creature. So interesting touch. In Lorwyn, evoke only appeared on elemental creatures with ETB abilities. Hideaway. So there's a cycle of hideaway lands. When the land comes into play tapped. When it does, look at the top 4 cards of your library, remove 1 from the game face down, then put the rest on the bottom of your library. So you can see here that the hideaway bit is the same on all the cards. What's different is what happens in terms of how you interact with that hidden away card. You'll notice that all of these lands have the ability to generate a certain mana of each colour, of each of the appropriate colour. Although of course they come into play tapped because of the hideaway. But what then happens is each card is different in terms of how you interact with that hideaway card. So the white tap, you can see each one, there's always a cost in the appropriate colour, a single mana of that colour. So with the white one, You may play the removed card without paying its mana cost if you attacked with 3 or more creatures. You may play the removed card with paying its mana without paying its mana cost if a library has 20 or fewer cards in. So you can see there's a condition on playing that hidden card, which is different, and you could argue there's some connection with the sort of things you would usually see in that colour thematically. So with the black one, it's about cards in hand. With the red one, it's about damage, and the green one, it's a power of creatures. White one, it's attacking, and the blue one, it's amount of cards in your library. Moving on to the cycles, there's a cycle of commands: austere command, cryptic, profane, incendiary, and primal commands. They're all rares. They all have 4 modes, and you can choose 2 different modes as opposed to just one. So we've seen modal cards before, but it's interesting you get to use 2 out of the 4. And the casting costs are all over the place. So 4 and 2, 3 and 2, X and 2, 1 and 3. Cycle of the hideaway lands, we've already seen these. So yeah, all the cycle of lands at rare for each of the colours, the 5 of them were also 5 hideaway lands. You can see when we come to Shadowmoor, which is the next large set, so not the set after this, but the set after that, the first set of the next mini block, there's a tie into these. But we'll see that when we get to that. Incarnations, apparently inspired from the original incarnations from Judgment. They're all elementals. All elemental incarnations. They cost 3 and then 3 of the particular colour. You get a powerful effect, a powerful boon, I believe it's called, and it's shuffled back into its owner's library if put into the owner's graveyard from anywhere. So there's something that gets triggered here when something else happens. So the white one, if a spell or ability would deal damage to you, prevent that damage. You gain life equal to damage this prevented this way. So purity, guile, the blue one, if a spell or ability you control would counter a spell, remove that spell from the game, and you may play that card without paying its mana cost. And the black one, dread, whenever a creature deals damage to you, destroy. So you can see these are very powerful when they're in play. Hostility, if a spell you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage. Put a 3/1 red elemental shaman creature token with haste into play for each 1 damage prevented this way. That's really sort of interesting twist there. So you're actually preventing damage to the opponent, but you're getting tokens back as a result of preventing that damage to an opponent. And then Vigor, if damage will be dealt to a creature you control other than Vigor, prevent that damage, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature for each 1 damage prevented this way. They're all 6/6s, and you can see all of them have that, when it's put into the graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it back into its owner's library. There's our Planeswalkers we've already had a look at. But there's a cycle, there were just 5 of them. So we have a cycle here of uncommon changelings. So they have changeling in addition to some other ability on them. 1 in each of the colours. And there is also a cycle of, did I say they were uncommon? So that's the uncommon ones. This is the cycle of common ones. So they each have changeling on them. Pretty variable set of abilities. Beyond that, you can see the woodland changeling has nothing apart from changeling. White one's got flying. The blue one, you can give a target creature all creature types or lose it, so you can play around with the changeling badge, if you like, on creatures. Skeletal changeling, we've got regenerate, and then fire belly does that sort of fire breathing effect that you see in red. Oh, the set of vivids, yes. Uncommon vivid lands. Enters the battlefield tapped with 2 charge counters, and they can be tapped for 1 mana of a specific colour, or tapped and a charge counter removed for 1 mana of any colour. So, what do you notice about these cards? Apparently, so it says on MTG Wiki, the art description of each card in the cycle contained a pretty simple request to show a standard colour assigned location with a rainbow of colour somewhere in the piece. So I can really see the white one here, the blue one, the black one, the green one. Is the rainbow here somewhere? It's quite difficult to spot on that red one, isn't it? Almost like I need a real card here to do it. Interestingly, each one is a different artist. I'll have to come up with some excuse. What I'm aiming to do is, for Friday's video, you know, one of the ones where I like to go through physical cards. Yeah, definitely. Either I'll go through my Lorwyn binder and do a bit of, you know, close up and personal with these vivids, so we can get a good look at them. Or I'll find a deck with them in. I think there's a commander deck with vivids in, but certainly there's a strong possibility I want to go through some Lorwyn cards in real life, if you like. So there was this cycle of clash creatures. How are these described? So each of these common creatures has an enter the battlefield ability triggering a clash, rewarding a +1/+1 counter if successful. And you can see, actually, yeah, you know, all the same. There's some twists here. So the white and the blue one are same ability. The black one has this additional thing in addition to clash where it can't block. Red one, that's, yep, same as the white and blue. And the green one actually has an additional thing of all creatures able to block. Nath's Elite do so. So was that, is that referred to as lure? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, so I think it's called a lure effect. Maybe it's, yeah. Comment in the, sorry, yeah. Can you comment, please, if you can remember what particular nickname, if you like, this sort of thing has. I can't remember. Maybe I'm getting muddled up here. Maybe lure is just a single creature. I'm trying to remember whether it applies to all creatures able to block, and not just choosing one. So yeah. So there's a number of tribal, like weird tribal cycles which are incredibly wobbly, because they cycle from a color perspective, because of course they cycle partially around the tribes. They don't do it all. So you'll find that the number here is a little bit variable, and they won't all be they won't all be evenly distributed through the colours. What they do is sort of they're distributed around the creature types, but again, not all of them. And what you have here is you can see the common denominator here is, we have some champions. Okay, that's one thing. And they sort of represent, I suppose, a champion. What you do is you're representing with champion something that's going to fight on the behalf of this card. So when using this as an example, when this comes into play, sacrifice it unless you remove another fairy you control from the game. When this leaves play, that card returns to play. So these are champions, and they effectively fight on the behalf of another card, which is the one that you've removed from play. When this leaves play, the other card comes back into play. I'm just looking to see whether they do anything else. I mean, they do. There's other things that's stapled here. So next, tribal cycle. Okay, remember this is a tribal cycle, not a colour cycle. We've got the Harbingers. I think these might have been one of the few ones which was across all the tribes. So elementals, elves, fairies, giants, goblins, kithkins, merfolk and treefolk. They all had one each in there, because there's 8 tribes. So this had the full complement across the tribes. And they're all called Harbinger. So they're all uncommon. They all have a comes into play ability, which allows you to search your library for a card of a creature type and put it in on top of your library. Treefolk Harbinger also allows you to search your library for a forest. Either a treefolk or a forest. I keep mistakenly call these revelers. I mean to call them revealers. So they reveal another card of a particular tribe. Again, it's not the full 8 tribes in here. It's only 5 out of the 8. But you can choose not to reveal the card if you pay 3. Token makers, there's a less here. We've got 5 token makers here. One that makes kithkins, one that makes merfolks, one makes goblins, one makes elementals, and the one down here makes kithkins. So the other thing you'll notice is what happens here and I don't know if this meshes, it might just about work. So another way to look at this is if you look at this, so we've got Kithkin, Merfolk, Goblin, Elemental and Kithkin again, but you could argue that giants is represented by the actual cards here. So we've got the missing one from the token, if you like, is the fact that these are giants. And also you'll notice that they're actually generating tokens that are not of a particular type. These are all uncommon. And then Goblins, Kithkins, Merfolk. So that's generating a goblin. That's generating a goblin there. Is there anything here generating an elf? Probably not. Yeah, so there are a few holes here, whichever way you look at it. Right, keeping with tribal, so that was a subset of tribal token makers. We have tribal cantrips, and those are cards which, at the end, if you like, of whatever they've done, you get to draw a card, but on the condition that you control something. So Kithkin, Merfolk, Fairies, Giant, and Treefolk. So I'm being a bit slow because I really have to think about this. We got multiple different slices through this. Okay, so 8 cards which represent the 8 tribes, and you can see based on the color, the primary and secondary colors that I spoke about early on in the episode, how this reflects itself in the color identity of the particular legend. So there are a number of tribes which were 2 color, and some that were 3 color, or one that was 3 color, and one that was 5 color. Now, admittedly, they are all covered there. I was trying to think now. There was another. Yeah, so the elementals and the shapeshifters. So when I mentioned about there being 8 tribes, I didn't include the shapeshifter as a distinct tribe because it's all tribes. So yeah, that does map correctly to the colours I spoke about before. If there was a legendary shapeshifter here, then I'm assuming it would be a 5 colour one, but there isn't. So and you can see here, this is an effect we've seen before. So where you're giving creatures of the particular tribe something, normally I suppose +1/+1, but some of them you get something a bit extra. So this one has Shroud, and there's a few here with additional abilities on them as well. This one gives Tree Folks and Forests Indestructible. You get +2/+2 and Trample. Obviously for as long as this is in play. So yeah, they grant other creatures of their creature type a bonus in power and toughness, and in some cases additional abilities, or they have abilities. Right, basic lands, what we're all here for. There was also a mega cycle that spread across multiple sets. So this sort of spell-shaped mega cycle, and these were creatures created by the spell shapers of Future Sight. So there was Gold Meadow Harrier, which was in this block, was in Lorwyn. Then we have Cloud Sprite from Acadian Mask, Festering Goblin from Onslaught, Spark Elemental Fifth Dawn, Land War Elves from Limited Edition Alpha, and Metallic Sliver from Tempest. So they were all creatures that were created by the shapeshifters of Future Sight, so that's where the tie-in is. And one of those was in the Lorwyn block, that's why I bring it up, which was Gold Meadow Harrier. There we have our lovely land. What did they do that with? It was interesting how vibrant two of, one each of the blue and the black were, and they didn't do that for the other ones. I'm assuming that was just looking for the the artists here. So those two were done by Ron Spears. Do we have an artist that was across all of the colours? So I got Warren. Interesting. But yeah, they got that sort of quite folky look to them. I'm looking here, I do see a number of cards which have slight sort of, what would you call it? Pastel shades look to them. But it's not the same artist. Cool. I do like these. Right, let's move on. If we get too mesmerised by land. So beyond the multicoloured legends that I've mentioned, because we had one from each of the tribals, we didn't have, like I said, I didn't have a shapeshifter one. There was, to add to that, a couple of monocolours. So Brigid and Ashling the Pilgrim. But all the others come from that original tribal cycle that I've already highlighted. There's our Planeswalkers. So we're starting to go through the different card types now. 31 cards had tribal as the type in them. So as I've already mentioned, that could be either is it actually, yeah, so that's where it specifically, it's not that it's a tribe member, it's got tribal in the type. So yeah, these were all tribal non-creatures, so instants, enchantments, sorceries, I think that's it. And you can see as part of the tribal type, they also mention a creature subtype here, including shapeshifter. There's a couple of nice twists here, like we've got an aura here as well. $16 non-basic lands. So I mentioned the cycle of hideaways. I also mentioned the cycle of vivids, but additionally we had these tribal cards. So you can see here, when they come into play, you have to reveal a card of a particular tribe. Now, this is important because notice it says merfolk card, fairy card, goblin card, elf card, giant card. It doesn't say creature card or anything like that. So it does mean you can reveal a non-creature card if it's got the appropriate tribe on it, which is super cool. If you do that, they don't come into play tapped. If you don't do it, then they do come into play tapped. And you can see we've got white, blue, blue, black, black, red, black, green, red, white. So let me just get this right in my head, because it's really important to understand why this isn't classed as a cycle, even though there are 5 of them. So there you can see they're specific to certain tribes, and the colour combinations they represent are the primary and secondary of those tribes. So this happens to be an allied colour. This is also an allied colour. So I've been doing this in my head. It's funny. This is allied. So Wooburg, white, blue, blue, black, black, red. But this one is black, green. So this is enemy, and this one here is red, white, which is also enemy. If this was a true cycle, like an allied colour cycle, we would have white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, and then green, white. So that's why this isn't included as a cycle. I mean, I suppose you could say it's a sub-cycle of tribal lands, or tribal dependent lands. And then also we've got this one here, which is Shimmering Crossover. So tap, add 1 to your mana pool. 1 tap, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. So it's a filter land. So we've got tribe specific mana fixing, and then we have also a filter land that allows us to do mana fixing. 169 creatures here in the set. I've already gone through all the different tribes. 46 have ETB abilities on them. We have 57 which have some sort of activated ability on them through doing something to activate them. And then we have a number of cards, 72 in fact, which have some sort of static ability on them, either, you know, like a named ability, a keyword ability, or just where the ability is, you know, described. And you can see because of the tribal nature of this, and cards that care about other things, and the various ETB, the various abilities that are just there because of other things like champion and that are in the set. That's why there's just so many creatures with some sort of static ability on them. I was curious as to see how many vanilla creatures there are after all of those. So all of those have something, you know, we've got the ETB stuff, we've got the activate ability, we've got the static. There's one vanilla creature in the set. We've got a number of enchantments in here. I think I tend to call them straight enchantments. They're just, you know, like they're not. Well, this is where it gets interesting, actually. This does affect a particular permanent, but it's removing it from the game. It's not as if it's enchanting, say, a creature and sort of sitting there, buffing the creature in some way. But you can see with these like non-aura enchantments, some of them are tribal in nature. And we have our auras, so they enchant something. Either here, I think it's a creature or a land. 11 of those. We've got, again, just regular artifacts. There are 10 of those, some of which you can see. Do we have here any that are, you would put into the category of mana rocks? Oh, this one, through tapping an untapped creature, we've got Springleaf Drum. This one will search out basic lands. And that one reduces the cost of non-creature spells. So interesting, selection going on there. No artifact creatures in the set. And 2 pieces of equipment. We've got Death Render and Rune Stalactite. +1/+1, and is every creature type, so it's like imparts Changeling on whatever it equips. And equips for 2, cast for 1. Death Render, cast for 4, equip for 2, +2/+2. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, you may put a creature card from your hand into play and attach Death Render to it. We have 31 instants in the set, which do a variety of different things, which we'll quickly look at in a moment. We have 22 sorceries, and again, in both cases, some of those are also tribal in nature and reference a particular creature type. So, in terms of destruction spells, obviously, Austere Command has ways of dealing with certain types of permanents. Neck Snap, attacking and blocking. Here's our Black Destruction, or destroy target non-elf creatures. We've got Weed Strangle, which has target creature destruction, and then it's got Clash on it as well. Another command here. You can destroy, one of the modes is to destroy a target non-basic land. We've got Green, a way of destroying a non-creature permanent, and you get card draw off of that if you control a tree folk. And then Spring Cleaning, another way of specifically of destroying enchantments, and also has Clash on it. And if you win, you get to destroy all the enchantments that your opponents control. In terms of damage, no surprise to see a lot of damage being done in red. Interestingly, with the fodder launch, gives a creature -5/-5 until end of turn, which is another way of destroying a creature, but also it deals 5 damage to that creature's controller. But there is an additional cost. We've got some of the usual things here that you see in red in terms of when we're talking about damage. So, 4 damage, 7 damage, and again a lot of sort of conditional stuff going on here as well that do extra things or extra damage, or ways of doing damage based on other cards. So yeah, quite a lot of flexibility in the red damage there, and utility. So a number of cards that impart something, you know, give a creature or something, or gain something, or something gets something. Here, +0, +1, +1, +1, -2, -0, -0, -2, or +2, +0. The -5, -5 we're already talking about. This sort of lopsided one, you see, +3, -3, -1, -1, and again certain conditions and utility here. Here's our profane command, which has a -X on it. Weed Strangle we saw before, +2, +0, +2, +2. Oh, yeah, Death Touch, life gain, and then more life gain. Bouncing, so we've got a bit of self bounce, I suppose, the bouncing the card from the graveyard back to your hand if you tap certain stuff. Then we've the sort of usual bounce you might see in blue, but again tweaked for the themes of the set. Some bounce back from the graveyard in black, and again, you know, notice the modal nature of some of this stuff. So yeah, a fair amount of bounce from different areas. Countering obviously in blue, and again some of this is modal, some of it is conditional, some of it has an interesting ability based twist to it. Card draw, because of the fact we've got cantrips in here, you're going to see a number of, you know, drawing cards stapled onto all the colours on particular cards, but within that there's also some cards which have, you know, non-cantrip card draw on them as well. That's why we've got so many from different colours in here. That we'd see sort of card draw in blue, say, and there'll be some sort of alternative resource card draw in black, maybe. But we're seeing this spread over into other colours as well in this set. Tap down, again on the cryptic here, or some form of tapping, either tapping or untapping. So the Woodland Guidance we have untapping. And then discard. So Thoughtseize was in the set. And in terms of graveyard shenanigans, you know, I always like to sort of flag this up. Again, because of the nature of the cards, there's a number of cards that are interacting with the graveyard in some way outside of the things you might normally expect in black and green. And this is a little thing I'm going to do going forward. For instance, in Sorceries, I will, you know, highlight things that I think from a whole load of different effects that you know, might be particularly relevant to the set. And I've got about 20 or 30 different searches I can do on Instants and Sorceries combined, but for each set I'm just going to focus in on either the normal things you see or things that might, you know, show up certain eccentricities of the set. So that's something new to watch out for going forward with this. And I've dabbled with this before, but I've got, I think, down to a nice balance now with this. Now, going back to the set as a whole, just to, before I start to look at the EDH Rec stuff and the prices of cards, and sort of close up the episode. So notable cards in here, we've got things like Shriekmaw, Door in the Siege Tower, Garrett Teague, Ponder. I don't know if you saw that Ponder was in the set. You've certainly seen those other ones that I've just mentioned. Let me try and find this. Here you go. Like, took a look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. You may shuffle your library, draw a card. So that's in there. And of course, Thoughtseize we already saw. And we've got those evoke creatures as well, super popular because of that interesting utility on them. And the command cycle as well, something I know are popular in various formats for the flexibility of the utility that you get in there. So yeah, like 2 out of 4 in terms of those sort of modal utility. So most expensive card in the set, Thorn of Amethyst, $26. The cryptics are up there, 25 for a cryptic command. Interesting that in the various reprints they've been in a form whereby I think there's been a slight reduction here because of them printing in Modern Masters, but a lot of the other ones are sort of, here are just pushing it below the $20 mark. But these are the two ones I think that have made it substantially, $10 cheaper. Probably Modern Masters, the price was still up there. Have we got any? Oh, there's our Amonkhet Invocations. Conic Masters had different artwork in it as well. Thoughtseize, of course, 21 for the original. It's been reprinted in the Invocation. Oh yeah, I remember this in Theros. Remember that artwork. $12. Was also in Time Spiral Remastered as a time-shifted card. Timber Protector, $20. Treefolk Tribal. Auntie's Hovel. So these tribal dual lands are really interesting. Obviously be popular in a tribal EDH build. Goblin deck, I suppose any tribal deck. Liliana, most expensive Planeswalker in the set in terms of the particular printing, so $13. Forced Fruition, 12. Dolmen Gate at 11. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to attacking creatures you control. That's an interesting card I've not really thought about before. We've got this permanent one-sided fog. Shapeshifter, $10. Sign of Mana, $10. Vigor, so we just dropped below the $10 mark. So the next Planeswalker is Garrett Wildspeaker in terms of price at $7.58. So that, not high prices on these original Planeswalkers. And then EDH popular one as reported from the EDH rec ranking. So Ponder, Austere Command, Muldrifter, Mosswalk Bridge. So you get, I think you knew already what was going to crop up in here if you're familiar with the set. 1,000-Year Exit, Rings of Bright Earth, Shriekmaw, Fertile Grand, Mirror Entity, Spinerock Knoll, Vigor, Oblivion Ring, and so on, and our Vivids here. Excellent. Yep, another set that makes me super smiley. You'll probably find that a lot as we're going through these sets post 10th edition. So in terms of the theme decks, we had a black-red theme. You're probably no surprise to see that these are tribal theme decks. And as a consequence, there were actually 5 theme decks instead of 4. I say it's 5 instead of 4. It's sort of it's flip-flopped over time, I think, between 5 and 4, depending on various things. But sometimes if it's sort of riffing around, say, a colour cycle, then it's more likely to be 5. With this, obviously, they wanted to, I suppose, cover a fair amount of tribal stuff. When it's around a particular theme, then in a set, then maybe you might only see 4 theme decks. And again, these are still theme decks; they're not intro decks yet. We haven't got into those ones where you had an extra booster, or they've shifted down to 40 cards in them, like a core set theme deck. So Boggart Feast, Black Red Goblin Tribal. It's got a Shimmering Grotto in it, a couple of Shimmering Grottos. Elementals Past, 5-colour elemental. You can see some vivid and grotto stuff going on to get that to fix for those colours. Black Green Elvish Predation. Kithkin Militia. It's mono white, and Merrow Riverways is Merfolk, white blue. So obviously they couldn't have covered all 8 tribes, or 9 if you include changelings, but it looks like they went for the main ones in there. In terms of Wednesday's Commander Durdle, interesting scenario situation has arrived. What I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to do 2 decks, and that's because for my card pool, for the card pool I used of 12 boosters, 12 virtual boosters from the set, I actually got 2 legends. So yeah, it's not going to play ball, unfortunately. This, I've noticed, sometimes happens. One of the reasons why I stopped having multiple tabs. But anyway, what I can do is tell you that my 2 choices are going to be Nath of the Gilt Leaf, because that was in my card pool, and also Wart Boggart Auntie was another legend that was in my pool of 12 boosters. So yeah, let me try and find those, just so you know what's coming. If I get into the bottom of this one, it's probably easier. God dear me, I'm having trouble with words. Is hard. I'm having trouble with words this morning. Nath of the Gilt Leaf is this 3 black green legendary creature elf warrior. It's a 4/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may have target opponent discard a card at random. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play. And Wart Boggart Auntie, black red, so 2 black red, 3/3 with fear. It's a legendary creature, Goblin Shaman, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target Goblin card from graveyard to hand. So it'd be interesting to see. Obviously, these are going to go down a tribal rabbit hole, but again, curious as to where the algorithm in Architect is going to take me once I've pruned out all the off-colour stuff in the card pool. So there we have it. That's another set Musings in the can. I hope you've enjoyed that one. That was certainly fun to make with all the different things going on. So thanks once again for watching, and bye for now. I'll see you in the next video.